Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Josef Schachter, founder of the Schachter Energy Report online at schachterenergy.ca. He's speaking to us from my hometown of Calgary. Welcome back to the show, Josef.
My pleasure. Good to be with you again, Jim.
Josef, any warning signs or difficulties coming up in the world economy affecting oil?
Yeah, we're beginning to see that, the more and more countries are going into lockdowns or into, restrictions in terms of movement. China is now, got one of their largest ports, the third largest in the world, closed because of COVID. Australia's, two biggest cities are down. New Zealand just went into another shutdown. U.S. data that we saw economically, we saw, the consumer confidence numbers weaken. We saw retail sales go negative. So there's a lot of slowing down in the economy. Some of it might be supply chain related, but there's also demand weakness in energy. And as you know from the conversations we've had over the last few months, I've been in the bear camp, and we're already seeing quite a substantial correction. Crude oil is just around, $65 today, so it's down around, 16-17%. The S&P TSX Energy Index is down 19%. But then when you go into some of the big names, Suncor is down, 26%, Precision Drilling 30%, Crescent Point 30%, Essential Energy 38%. So we've got a severe correction, and so we've, if you remember, said sell a number of months ago and go to cash on the sidelines. That's been a correct situation, and I think we're maybe halfway through the correction. We were 145 at the high. We're about 116 or so now, and I think we're going to break 100 and maybe even go into sub 90s if the price of crude breaks 60, which I think is likely in September, October, for a couple of reasons. One, summer driving season is over. Two, all the stimulus that the feds in Canada and the States have given, plus other countries have given, runs off. So there's not that stimulus out there for people to spend. And then I think we're also going to see continued supply chain problems. And then the question then becomes, how long does COVID last, and do the new variants, Kappa, which we're hearing more about now, on top of Delta, if they have an impact on people's movement and travel, then I think we're going to see weaker stock markets and weaker oil markets, and the bear case will probably last through to into the fourth quarter, and then we might see another buy signal at that point, just like we got in March of 2020 when we had table-pounding buys, and we added over 20 names to our buy list. Right now, we're sitting with a very small buy list simply because we think prices are in the energy sector, both energy service, and infrastructure are going lower.
Does the U.S. have a shortage of natural gas?
No, they're now exporting quite a bit, over 10 BCF from the Gulf Coast. LNG exports are big to the United States, to Asia. So, and there's more and more of that happening. But when you look at the rig count is focused on oil rigs. Last week it was up by 10 to 397 oil rigs versus 172 a year ago. The number of gas rigs in the States is 102, up from 70. So they're not drilling enough to grow the volumes in the States, but they are meeting the need. And U.S. inventories in storage are not growing. So I think we're going to see stronger prices for natural gas when we hit the winter demand in November of 2021. And, we've been over $4 for NYMEX. I think we'll see that kind of price range again later. So if the natural gas stocks get clipped enough, October-November period, normally you see natural gas back off after the summer electricity season is over, then I think that they would be some of the top names that we would put on our buy list.
Why does Quebec hate Alberta Oil and Gas and love oil and gas that comes from Saudi Arabia?
That is something we all ask about here. They don't want pipelines through their province, and yet they want our Canadian natural gas. Or they're buying it from the Marcellus. They don't mind the pipelines that bring oil, through the Line 5, which is, the line that is up for grabs here, politically with the United States, over the, under the tunnel they're trying to do, the concrete tunnel, which is not getting much support in the States and has a lot of environmentalists against it. But, the situation in Quebec doesn't make any sense. Importing oil from Saudi Arabia, which doesn't have the greatest human rights record, and ships in the St. Lawrence doesn't matter, but underground pipelines in Quebec do matter. The logic of it is nuts.
Why does Joe Biden hate Canada and love Russia? He canceled the XL pipeline from Alberta, and now Russia is the number 2 foreign supplier of oil to the U.S.
You sound like Premier Kenney with that kind of a comment. I think what we're looking at is the Russians are now shipping to the United States 200,000 barrels a day of crude oil. We're still shipping, much more, 3.5 million barrels. So the biggest imports into the States, almost 58%, I think is the number, come from Canada. But they're now being friendly and asking OPEC to increase production. They're asking Russia to sell more to the States, and yet they want to push their own industry down because of their climate initiatives or their anti-fossil fuels. And yet, even with the slowdown, U.S. production rose by 100,000 to 11.4 million barrels a day. And I think with the activity that's being done on non-federal lands, because the federal lands, they've stopped allowing drilling to some extent. On the privately owned lands, I expect we'll see U.S. production rise to probably 12 million by the fourth quarter. So when you take into account the increases that OPEC has given to the market already, the 400,000 they're going to add over the next 5 months, so that'll get you another 2 million, plus the United States bringing on 1 million, plus Line 3 coming on, adding about 300,000 into the States. I don't think there's a shortage of oil. I think we're going to be looking at inventory builds coming up. I wouldn't say we're going to have a glut, but the low inventories will reverse and inventories will build back. But in the meantime, as we get past the summer driving season and demand wanes, we're going to see the price of WTI break below 60. The question is, how low does it go? Does it go to the low 50s? Does it go a little below that? I don't know. I think we'll watch the data every week starting September, October, and if we see inventory builds, then that would be the case. One thing to note, though, everybody got excited today by the 3.2 million barrel decline in the commercial oil stocks on the EIA data. But the reason that happened was because net imports fell 813,000, or by 5.7 million barrels. So if exports hadn't grown and imports hadn't come down, you would have had an increase of probably 2.4 million barrels, 2.5 million barrels on the week, which at this time of year, a build of inventory, if there wasn't an inventory change, is not normal. So again, that gives me the evidence that we're probably going to be seeing inventory builds starting in September. And the reason the U.S. exports are rising is because the increase in light oil that's coming out of the shale plays, the Eagle Ford, and of course the big one is the Permian. That oil is not being refined in the United States because the refineries there are fixed to handle heavy crude from Canada and from Mexico, etc. And Russia now is shipping to the United States, and so the light oil is being shipped and sold to foreign countries. And that will probably continue until the U.S. refiners make the decision to switch back to the domestic light oil.
We'll have more with Josef Schachter right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Josef Schachter. Joseph, what's the health of the Alberta oil and gas patch?
Well, natural gas prices and oil prices, liquids prices have been pretty strong, so the industry is generating more cash flow. The first thing they're doing is paying down debt, so that's very important. The other beneficiary, of course, is the government with their royalties. They're picking up more revenues than thought, so our deficits will probably shrink, as will that in BC because of the high natural gas prices that northeast BC are generating for the companies in the province of BC. Also, Saskatchewan will benefit from it. So we're looking at an economy that's doing well. Housing prices have started to lift in Alberta. Calgary, Edmonton are picking up. Red Deer's picking up, but nowhere near the kind of price levels of Vancouver or Toronto. I think even Halifax is probably more higher prices than Calgary at this point. But with the big thing is we need to see job growth and net migration into the province, and we won't be seeing that probably for another year or two. I think we need to see $80 sustainable oil before we start seeing job growth again.
Alberta says it wants to be the world's Bitcoin miner because it has the energy to do it. Your thoughts?
Well, where's the electricity coming from? Is the electricity coming from oil, or is it, it's not coming from coal anymore? The electricity, TransAlta is switching off all those coal-fired facilities to cogen from natural gas. But again, you look at the amount of energy that goes into create Bitcoin. I'm skeptical in all the attacks on Bitcoin that are going on now by the central banks around the world, particularly led by China. I think that there's so many Bitcoin companies, and I think that there's an excess of them. And if we do see a comeuppance in the market, I think Bitcoin, from where it is right now, probably has a 2-for-1 downside, and I would stay away from being involved in Bitcoin at this point. Under $10,000, it's probably the value of electricity, and then it makes sense to buy it. But when it's trading at 4 times that price, that's a large margin of error in it.
Is Alberta going to become one of the world's major hydrogen producers?
Well, everybody's talking about trying to get there and do it. We have some natural advantages here because of the energy industry, the energy research ability, the focus of the energy companies to do their share to get to the government goals of climate change. We've seen a big effort by the oil sands producers. We're seeing it by the natural gas. We're seeing it by the pipeline companies. The question is hydrogen going to be the thing? And I think what we saw in Japan is that the technology is still not there. Japan was supposedly using a lot of hydrogen vehicles, but at the end they were using diesel fuel vehicles because of some problems with the technology. So I think we need to have a breakthrough on technology before hydrogen becomes a meaningful number in the consumption area.
What energy issues should our politicians be focusing on during the election campaign?
Well, I think we're going to be crapped on. Some of this maybe not something you want to use for the radio show, but I think the energy industry is a political football between the Liberals attacking it and the NDP and the Greens. I think that we're going to be seen as the bad boys. Even though isn't the consumer the one that's using all of this, and then you don't want your lights to go out, and you want your electricity for air conditioning, and you want to drive from place to place. Why aren't EV sales, electric vehicle sales, picking up if people were so environmentally concerned? So I think that the government, because their target of 2035 is unrealistic, they've now made it a 2050 net zero target. They haven't met any of their targets, and so they're going to need to have a boogeyman to attack, and the oil and gas industry are a bunch of polite people who are trying to defend and saying we are doing the right thing, but they're not as vociferous as the politicians are. So I think we're looking at some very bad press for the energy industry between now and the end of the election cycle.
The oil sands is always targeted by international environmental groups. One coal-powered plant in Chicago apparently pollutes more than all of the oil sands. We never hear about that Chicago power plant.
No, you don't hear about that, or the fact that whatever we do in North America and in the OECD, if China has half the pollution from the expanding use of coal-fired plants, and China is financing coal-fired plants throughout Asia and Africa, we're not going anywhere. And then you've got India, the same thing, with a massive amount of coal-fired. So all of this talk of the improvements we're going to do here is not going to happen. And in the United States, if Biden was serious, then he would put in a significant gas tax at the pump. But politically, he's seeing $3 pricing nationally, $3.19 I think was the number, and $5 gasoline at the pump in California, and yet he's pressuring OPEC to raise production so that the price of oil comes down, but he's at the same time not allowing Canadian oil to come down, or allowing, or being a proponent and a supporter of the U.S. oil and gas industry, which I think is dumb. If he wants to pick a choice between oil and gas and focus on gas, then that would be, what you think you should do if you were pro-environmental and pro-transition fuels. But, think about all of the amount of materials and the mining of the materials to create, the solar panels and to create the wind farms. All of that is massively environmentally negative, and yet everybody looks at the final, thing of having solar farms and wind power and offshore wind power, and not looking at how you get to that and how bad the environmental impact is of that.
Joseph, anything else we should be keeping an eye on right now?
Well, I think the election is going to keep us focused on what are the goodies, and are we going to see any more taxes at some point, for on our real estate, did they change capital gains tax for investors? I think all of that is going to be in the cards at some point. Government's going to need more revenue. But from the point of view of the market right now, as I'm sitting and defensively and have recommended to our subscribers to be in that position for a long time, but I think sometime over the next few months we're going to get a significant buy signal with the markets down, maybe the Dow down 20% and the S&P by the same, maybe composite, the NASDAQ even more, the TSX probably down by 20-25. When that happens, I think we're going to get a terrific buy signal window, just like we got in March of 2020. And so investors should be building up their lists of which names they want to own. And we've been doing that with our subscribers, talking about what we like, what price would be a great price to buy. And when the time window comes when we think it's the right time to buy, we'll be sending out action alert buys to our clients. And 5 days thereafter, then myself, I could be able to be buying those names that we tell our clients about.
Joseph, thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure as always, Jim. Take good care.
My guest has been Josef Schachter, founder of the Schachter Energy Report online at SchachterEnergyReport.ca. He was speaking to us from Calgary. If you have any questions for Joseph or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@HowStreet.com. You can find us on Twitter @HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.